The game is not nearly as anticipated as tomorrow's hearing is going to be with the chairman of the Fed. What do you want to have happen? What do you want?
First of all, I'd like to get a little more insight into where they think they're going. We're halfway through QE2. They had a unanimous FOMC meeting. I thought there would be some dissension. There is no dissension. So it looks like they're going to keep, printing money out of thin air, money creation. I think the yield curve yesterday was fairly interesting. It's starting to steepen. Some people would say under normal circumstances, under a routine economy and a cyclical problem, it's a good thing. I don't think our problems are routine. They're extraordinary and they're structural. So I think yesterday's yield curve could be telling us other things. The pro-cyclical indicators, yield curve, dollar, commodities, are saying one thing, while what the Fed looks at, the lagging indicators, the output gap model, says another thing. And so I'm worried they're not going to preempt inflation. I'm worried that they're gonna see it too late, and then we're gonna have a problem.
Although, Paul, after you look at last week's jobs numbers, there are some people who are going to say, well, let's give this a little bit of time and make sure that was actually an aberration.
That's my point. The output gap model, it's always a little bit slow to take on these things, and so they're going to be looking at. That's why I have a problem with the Phillips curve and with Humphrey Hawkins. That's why I have a bill that I'm reintroducing to get them focused on price stability only. That's what the Fed should be focused on, not this employment mandate.
So this is going to be, tomorrow's hearing with Ben Bernanke in front of you is going to be a hearing on the Fed and its mandates.
On the Fed, on its mandate, and on its current conduct of monetary policy. And the balance sheet.
The
budget is pretty big.
But that's an interesting from the budget.
But it's a budget committee. Is the focus going to be fiscal or Fed policy?
Here's the problem. Our fiscal policy, I would argue, is on a collision course with our monetary policy. So these things, unfortunately, are becoming conjoined. If we don't get our fiscal policy right, then monetary policy is going to start...
He's going to say what he's always said, and that is you guys need to start being more disciplined.
I'd like to see some more specifics from him on pushing us, on nudging us farther down the path of fiscal consolidation, on spending cuts. Look, right now, the deficits we're running here are basically deferred tax increases. It's bad for jobs, it's bad for growth, and I think monetary policy is trying to bail out really bad fiscal policy. Let's get our fiscal policy fixed so we don't have to lean on this excessive monetary policy, which I think at the end of the day will be excessive and too loose.
Do you think you can corner him into saying what's been more effective, Fed policy or fiscal policy? Can you get him to defend stimulus?
I don't try to corner Fed chairs. I just don't think that's the thing to do, but I want to try and get a sense of where they're going and what they think the right policy mix is. And it would be helpful to getting us moving the needle on spending. The president's talking about $400 billion in savings over 5 years. That's almost nothing in the whole scheme of things. We're talking about repackaging stimulus as investments mean just more and more spending. It would be helpful to get some comments in the right direction on getting spending down.
Well, that's in opposition to some of your own leadership, too. I think the Republican proposal calls for $32 billion in cuts this year, right?
That's just for the rest of this fiscal year. So,
but do you agree with that for this year?
I'm the one who put the numbers out.
Okay, so I thought these were Boehner's numbers.
So no, I put it out
the Tea Party would like to see even more cuts this year.
All of us would. What we did was we put what we pledged. Our pledge said bring spending for the rest of the fiscal year down to 2008 levels for domestic discretionary spending.
I thought it was $100 billion. Where's that number
that was from? If we did it at the beginning of the year.
But there's only 7 months
through the fiscal year. So we're bringing spending down to the levels we pledged at all along. If we had gotten to these levels before the fiscal year started, we would have gotten some really good savings. But because we're halfway through the fiscal year, the savings aren't as large. But we're doing exactly what we said we would do. Bring domestic discretionary spending down to 2008 levels for the rest of the fiscal year.
Can you get that? $32 billion in cuts?
I'd like to exceed it.
Can you see that pass in the Senate, too, though?
That's a good question. That's a Harry Reid problem. Our issue is the debate that we're having right now in the House is a great debate. How much should we cut spending instead of should we increase spending? So I'm excited about this debate we're having. And this is the beginning of the beginning. People say, oh, gosh, you just put this spending cut out there as if this is all we're going to do. This is just the start. This is just for the rest of this fiscal year. This is the beginning of the beginning. We've got a lot more we're going to be doing and rolling out that we need to do to get spending headed in the right direction and get this deficit down. We're not going to tax our way out of this problem. If we try, we're going to kill the economy. We got to cut spending and reform spending programs.
When you look at the UK and you look at austerity being implemented and then you look at their fourth quarter numbers go negative, and does that worry you?
It does.
Do you think they cut too close to the bone?
No, I don't think they cut too close. They cut too late. And so let's preempt a European type of austerity. What is austerity as we now define it? Cuts to current seniors on entitlements and tax increases on everybody that slows down your economy. That is exactly what we will have to do if we keep procrastinating, if we keep kicking the can down the road on all of these entitlements and on all of this discretionary spending. So by getting the budget under control now, you can have prosperity, pro-growth economic policy with spending cuts, which is, I would argue, pro-growth. Spending cuts, pro-growth tax reform, that to me is the best recipe, along with sound money, which is another conversation we just got out of. That is how you preempt European-like austerity. If we do nothing, and if we keep spending more, thinking that that's going to pave the path toward prosperity, then we will have European austerity.
But nobody's saying to continue on this path. Even the president now. I was going to ask you how...
The president not only continued on the path he inherited, he made it worse. He's accelerated. He's increasing the debt. He's increasing the deficit. Because of health care, because of failure to address entitlements, because of a 24% increase in base domestic discretionary spending over the last 2 years. You throw stimulus on top, it went up 84%. So the president has turned the spending spigot on, and he has yet to really turn it off.
Let me ask this, though. You talk about wanting to get Bernanke tomorrow to offer some insights as to what he would like to see in terms of fiscal policy. But it's traditionally pretty difficult to get a sitting Fed chair to start making comments on fiscal policy because they don't want to hear your comments on their monetary policy.
No, but Ben, he does. He's a little less cryptic than Alan Greenspan was. I've been in a lot of Fed meetings, Fed hearings. In the last time he came to the Budget Committee, he did actually counsel spending reductions, entitlement reforms, and spending cuts. So I think he'll probably do that again. But again, we need to make sure that our fiscal policy is in order so that our monetary policy is not compromised. And I would argue one is compromising the other.
But do you expect him to be a willing participant when you say things like we need a single mandate for the Fed, not a dual mandate?
No, I don't expect that.
Okay.
No, I think he'll protect Fed jurisdiction. And we just don't necessarily agree on
Although
that.
Greenspan
he knows where I stand, and you know.
Yeah.
Greenspan has suggested that they're fine with a single mandate. At least some people are.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think any agency with lots of discretionary powers likes losing those discretionary powers. And so I think that's an institutional thing, and obviously I don't think so. I think we need to have sound money, very transparent and accountable Federal Reserve System, solely focused on price stability, not all this other stuff. That's what other government agencies and fiscal policy authorities and the legislative branch are in charge of. They just got to make sure that our money maintains its reliable store of value, and that, in my opinion, is being compromised.
It sounds like you'd be happy if he said, you guys need to cut spending, and I'll be over here busy raising rates.
Yeah, I mean...
Is that right?
We're near zero. I'm more of Honig, the last Fed guy who went off from Kansas City, who went off. I'm not talking about high interest rates. I'm talking about just not zero. Even if we go to 1%, we would still be very loose on our monetary policy. But you look, didn't China just? I think I read this morning that they just raised the rates. So my fear is they're going to try to mop up all this excess money after the cow is out of the barn, after the inflation expectations have been formed. Credibility and perception is everything when it comes to monetary policy, and my fear is sound money is secondary toward short-term employment growth. The irony of this is that sound money is a necessary precondition to sustainable real economic growth.
Okay, we'll talk more about the hearing tomorrow and about what it was like giving the response, which I'm really curious about, just as an experience.
Sure. And then we can talk about the Packers maybe some more.
Yeah, I figured that. Congressman Ryan is going to stick around for the rest of the show.